Hi everyone, it's Rachel. If you've ever felt like you wanted to create a digital product, this is the video for you. I'm not coming to you as some expert who's done this a million times. In fact, this is actually the first time I'm creating a digital product, so I thought that we could really just kind of do this together. So if you've been sitting on an idea or some sort of side project that you've been wanting to create and it has to do with selling your first digital product, this is your permission slip to start small and to start now. So let's get into it. So let me back up. Why a digital product? I've been wanting to create a digital product for the longest time. In fact, it's probably, I want to say months, definitely, but I almost want to say years at this point because it's something that I've definitely seen the potential of and there's so much opportunity in it. But for whatever reasons, I've been going through a little bit of just like a stickiness in my mind in terms of actually going through with it. And as I was reflecting on what was really in my way and what was stopping me, it was for a couple of different reasons. So one is, why would anyone want to purchase a product from me when there are so many others that are out there? But as I really started to dig more into that, that was really just a limiting belief that I held. And I was in some ways kind of making myself smaller than I really needed to be. And maybe that's something that you can relate to, whether it is creating your first product or creating something online in general. Maybe there's just something around almost like an imposter syndrome in some ways that I was dealing with, and maybe that sounds relatable to you. But then I remembered the whole reason of why I really wanted to create a digital product in the first place is because I have had an extremely varied career. I've been in all facets of marketing, both at corporations and large companies, at startups, and then also doing some creative entrepreneurship on my own as well. And over time, with all of these different roles and all of this different experience I've had, I've definitely collected so many different things, whether it is a deck format, whether it is a project plan or a content calendar, or there's so many different things that I have created from scratch. And then when I go into my next role, I either sort of fine tune the thing that I had already built, or I create new templates and new workbooks and new things to kind of build off of. And after all of this experience, I'm like, wait, after all of these years, I've really collected a huge arsenal of resources that I can pull from for myself. So why not actually increase the lifespan of all of the knowledge that I have and all of the experience and increase it so that other people can benefit from it as well? So that really got me out of my head to realize, like, okay, even though there are so many different workbooks and tools and templates and all these things that are out there, none of those things have been created by me. And honestly, sometimes when I look online and I look at some of the resources that are out there, it can actually feel really overwhelming because some of those resources maybe have too much information and too much of something that I don't really need, and I might need just one aspect of that, or it's on the other spectrum of it just doesn't have enough. And so I'm trying to create products and tools that are just the right amount of information and nothing too much and nothing too little. So hopefully what I create and what I start to put out there in this world as I sort of navigate, what my voice is and what types of products I want to create, all of that will come to light. So for you, as you start to think about why a digital product, the next question that comes up is, well, what is that actual product that you want to build? And so for me, as I mentioned, because I have all this experience and access to all of these different templates and things that I've created on my own, the question then becomes like, oh, well, which one do I launch first? Do I create something net new? Do I just repurpose something that I've built in the past? And I always come back to this, and I do this in my coaching as well, in terms of figuring out what is actually the smallest, sweetest step that I can take so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, that it brings a bit more ease into all of the thoughts that I have. And that really helps simplify the type of product that I want to actually come out with. So of course, there's sort of a roadmap that I have in my head in terms of what types of products along the way that I would like to launch. But I think for this first one, it's really just a matter of helping me push past this mental mindset block that I've had and just do it. And so what is the easiest thing that I can come up with that is also top of mind is actually a podcast planning template. So this is something for me that is top of mind, but it's also rooted in data. So for you, think about perhaps, is there something that people constantly ask you about of how do you keep yourself organized when you are planning an event or when you're, putting together your weekly schedule and your calendar? There's a lot of different things that you could maybe pull from. But for me, as I was looking through some of the data from my YouTube videos or just things that I know that I've built recently, my podcast and how to create a podcast video actually had quite a lot of views for my channel. And so I thought, okay, well, there's a lot of interest in podcasts, so maybe this could be the next natural thing that I create that could really help people. So that is why I landed on a podcast planning template. But for you, think about if you can go off of data, great. But even if it's just anecdotally, some people are asking you about certain things, or it might even just be what your biggest interest is, think about where most of that energy is coming from as far as where you can actually help people. So with my podcast planning template that I created, it's literally the thing that I actually use to keep myself organized when it comes to my podcast. So it's been on a little bit of a hiatus, but as I bring back some new episodes in a new season and a different format, I have been using this template to keep myself organized, and I've also fine-tuned it a little bit so that it makes more sense for what my purposes are this go around. It keeps track of guest interviews, it keeps track of title ideas, release dates, notes, and anything like that. It's nothing fancy, but it definitely works and it's enough. And sometimes enough is all you need to get the ball rolling. So here are some tips that I have in terms of creating your first product. Start with what you know or have used. There's no need to really reinvent the wheel or do something brand new. If you have tried something and it works for you, chances are it's going to work for other people as well. Number 2, just start jotting down some notes and creating a rough draft of exactly how you can maybe fine-tune the product that you want to create, what it is you actually want to achieve, and what's the outcome that will ultimately help people. Number 3, make it pretty enough, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Of course, when something looks a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, there's different colors or icons or good branding. All of that really does help sell a product, but remember, this is all an iterative process, so it doesn't have to be perfect from the beginning. Number 4, use tools that are already natural to you. If you are someone that uses Canva a lot, or if you're someone who uses Excel a lot, or Outlook, or Google Sheets, or Slides, or all of these different tools, just use something that already comes second nature to you, because it's going to be that much easier for you to then explain how to use it or just navigate your way through the actual product that you are creating. For me, Notion feels very intuitive and second nature to me. As soon as you get going with it, it gets a lot easier to use. And so the product that I am creating for this podcast planning template is built in Notion. And then lastly, set a deadline for yourself. So if you're not accountable to a date or a time, it's going to be really difficult to really launch. It's almost like a failure to launch in some ways. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's taken me several months to actually come to this place of creating this video of how to create your first digital product, because I didn't really have a date accountable to myself. I kind of kept putting it off. Life happens, work happens, all these other things happen if you let it. But if you create a commitment to yourself and give yourself a date, and if it helps any at all, maybe even having some sort of accountability partner, or you can let me know in the comments below if you have a specific date in mind to hold yourself accountable, that definitely helps keep you on track. Okay, so now that we know exactly which type of template and some tips in terms of how to actually hold yourself accountable and get the ball rolling on this, so now that you have your product and you've sort of perfected it, and I say this in quotes, perfected it to a certain degree to where it feels acceptable enough to actually sell and put out on a marketplace, now you have to decide how you're actually going to sell this. So there's 3 different platforms that are most popular, and I'm gonna walk you through each of these and the pros and the cons to each. So there is a platform called Podia, I think I'm saying this right, and it looks like it is exactly on what you might need, where you can sell your ebooks, worksheets, templates, and anything online as it relates to a digital product. Now, when you look into the pricing for Podia, there's actually a couple of different options. So there's the mover and the shaker, which is a cute little way to actually brand it. But let's just say we're gonna go with the mover, and I don't really want to even go through the shaker because it looks like that is the more expensive version. And since this is our first time putting together a digital product, that's one thing that I think is a learning from things that I've done in the past, is just to ensure that you are minimizing costs however you can. Especially as you start a new project. You don't have to get the fanciest thing or think about things in terms of, what's gonna save me money longer term down the road, because there's so many changes that can happen along the way when it comes to your business or your life. So I always like to kind of minimize the costs, especially in the beginning, just to get myself up and running. So let's look at the mover version. It looks like on the mover plan, there are two different options, whether you can pay annually or monthly. If you pay annually, that's $33 a month. And if you pay monthly, that's $39 a month. So if we do some quick math, that is $396 versus $468. So there's a little bit of a difference in terms of how much you end up paying. For me, I would probably do something that is more month to month, because as I put more products out, I will learn more, I'll see what my needs are more, and it just helps me sort of, again, minimize that cost up front. If I were to go this route. Whether you do the annual or the monthly, it looks like there is a 5% transaction fee. So for example, if you have a product that you're launching that's $10, you would then, if my math is right, have to end up paying 50 cents per transaction. Let me just make sure. Yes, that's 50 cents. So that's one option with Podium. Now let's go to Gumroad. Gumroad is another one, and again, very much made for the digital creator, someone who has products that they'd like to sell online. So I have actually seen Gumroad a lot, as well as the third option that I'm going to share in a little bit. But with Gumroad, as I look at the transaction fees and the cost, it looks like there isn't any sort of monthly or annual cost, which is actually really nice. However, per transaction, you end up spending and paying a little bit more. So it looks like there is a 10% transaction fee as well as an additional 50 cents. So again, if you have that $10 product, it's going to then immediately take 10% off, which is $1 plus 50 cents. So you would immediately right off the bat be less $1.50. In addition, there are these additional costs as far as Stripe goes or credit card transaction fees go. So that's one thing to take into account, I think, regardless of whatever platform you are on. So that's one thing to consider. And then the third option is Stan Store. I'm sure you've seen Stan Store maybe as links in bios for certain creators. I know this is a pretty popular one. So I'm going to look at the pricing here. And again, there's two different tiers, just like how there was for Podia with the mover and shaker. This one is Creator and Creator Pro. It doesn't look like there is actually a transaction fee like there is for the other two, but there is a monthly fee. So on the Creator monthly, it's $29, or on the annual version, it's $25. So it says that you end up saving actually 20% over the year, and which is actually pretty good. I think that might have been the case as well for Podia, but it looks like the monthly is cheaper, and it also looks like it not only has the ability to have digital products and lead magnets, but as I mentioned, you've probably seen sort of that link in bio store on a lot of creators' Instagram accounts. So that's definitely an option here. You can add on coaching calls, you can add on courses. It looks very robust on this, but I think after going through each of these three, I'm likely just going to go with Gumroad. Even though there's more of a transaction fee, I am more comfortable with that versus having another recurring monthly cost, because as someone who runs my own business and has, obviously Netflix subscription, Hulu subscription, Peacock subscription, there's a lot of monthly recurring costs that I also have in my personal sort of entertainment life. So I want to try to minimize the recurring costs that I have. We're just gonna go with Gumroad. So that might be the option and case for you too. It kind of just depends on sort of what your needs are and what your priorities are. So let's go with Gumroad. And I am going to now just create an account and select Start Selling. It looks like you can select different options with Facebook, Google, X, Stripe, or just your regular email. I am going to actually connect this to a Google account of mine, and let's get going. So let me go ahead and input this here, continue. Now it looks like it is going to ask for an authentication code. Let me get that out here. Okay, enter the authentication code. Now it looks like, okay, great. I have a dashboard. So from here now, I can see they very easily sort of split things out into the products that I have, if I have any collaborations with people. So that's great to see here. I can customize my checkout form. There is email, workflows to set up some automations, I'm assuming, and then where I can see some sales, analytics, and ultimately what some payouts would be. So speaking of payouts, before getting through all of the sort of Gumroad settings, let's talk about pricing for your product. It depends on really what your priorities are and what your objective is. For me, as I mentioned earlier on, this is really just a test for me to put my first product out there. It doesn't necessarily have to make me $1 million or anything like that. I have no expectation when it comes to sort of the financial gain of it. It's really just the action of it that's really important to me. So the pricing of this for me is going to be really easy. I'm actually only going to charge $5 for the product. I think it's worth $5. I think it could be potentially worth a little bit more if I also add some more bells and whistles to it. But for the version that it's at right now, I feel like that's pretty acceptable. And it's something that will save people a ton of time and also not cost them too much too. So that's how I'm determining pricing, but pricing for you could be different if you have different expectations. If this is something that you really do want to be a very substantial revenue stream for you, you might want to do some more market research. For me, as I was looking through kind of some other templates, and I'm pretty familiar with how much templates sort of range from, and so I feel really comfortable with the $5. It could be something else for you, as I mentioned. So now, as I go through Gumroad, let's see. It says create your first product. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. I am going to give it a name, and we're just gonna call it Podcast Planning Notion Template. I'm gonna say it's a digital product, which it is. And then the pricing down here, as I mentioned, I am pricing this out to be $5. Now I can actually customize it. It looks like now you have to create a description for this. So I am just going to copy paste a description that I already had ready for this. I'm going to modify some of the formatting using some of these tools that they have here. You can create a custom domain. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep things really simple for myself. And it says here that you can also create a cover image. Now I'm going to select a cover. And what I really like is as you upload the cover, you can actually see the preview on the right-hand side of how this will look like. And then of course there's a thumbnail as well. So the thumbnail is really great just to give people a little preview as they're sort of maybe browsing through the Gumroad library, looking for resources. It's something that should hopefully pop for people and give people a really good sense in terms of what the offer actually is. And then it looks like here you can actually create a call to action, whether it's I want this, buy this, or pay. And for me, I want this works. It feels a little bit more exciting. And under the summary here, it says you will get. So this is something that I actually wrote in the template myself of what you will gain So I'm going to just copy paste that and reformat a little bit. And I think for right now, that might actually be it. So there's all these different integrations and things, and that's the part where you can kind of customize for yourself. But I think for my purposes, I'm just gonna keep everything off. I'm going to save and continue it. And then I think that's pretty much it. And now you can select publish, and it's up there and it's live, which is so fun. So now that it's all ready to actually be published, the one thing that you do have to do that I forgot to mention in the beginning, but you can go ahead and do that now or at the end of this, is you have to go into your settings in Gumroad and you have to ensure that you have a payment method that is actually connected. So you'll have to say what country you're located in, provide your valid ID, and select your payout schedule. So that can be weekly, monthly, or quarterly. I think the idea of getting paid weekly is really nice, so I'll just go ahead and do that. There is a minimum threshold of $10, so they're not gonna give you a payout of, since I have a product that's $5, if I sold one, I would have to actually sell another one in order to get the payout. And then you can actually connect this to your bank account. So it's super simple. Put in all of your banking information there, and then you would actually just have to connect it to a payment method. So it's either your bank account, your debit card, or PayPal. For me, I feel like bank account just kind of makes the most sense and it's most streamlined. So go ahead and put all of your bank information in there or whatever option you have. And then it's basically it. So now that your product is out there, just make sure that you promote it, you publish it, you tell your friends, you create a YouTube video, or you do something to kind of just help people find it, because the distribution and the marketing of this is actually very key to making a successful product. And I'm happy to create a separate video about that, but I feel like the purpose of this video in particular was to really just walk you through some of the steps that it takes in order to get your first product out there and see what happens. And before I go, I feel like it's always so important to celebrate a milestone. For me, this was a huge milestone, and it might be for you as well if you watch to the end of this video. So there's a couple things that I think are really good prompts to reflect on. What felt easy in this process? I think that sometimes when we think of these big projects or bigger projects in our mind of launching something or creating something for the first time, the project in itself can seem really overwhelming and can seem like it's a lot, but there must have been certain aspects of it that felt really easy. So let's identify those right now. And then on the other side of that is what felt sticky, what felt a little bit harder than you wanted it to be. I think identifying those hard moments as well is really important, because then you can also identify the areas in which you might think about how to make that aspect of the launch or the project or the product that much easier the next time you do it. Remember, this is really just about building muscle in getting into that habit of creating something, launching something, publishing something. So it'll just be that much easier the next time you do it. So let's recap a little bit of all the things that we walked through. We identified our why and exactly what the product is that we want to launch. We identified which platform we want to actually sell the product on. We identified the starting price. We created a simple sales page through this platform. We published it, and we celebrated and reflected. So I hope that this video really does help you in getting that momentum going and getting the energy going around this creative project that you have. Let me know how it goes in the comments, and I'll see you next time.